We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, continuing our conversation with Graham J. Noble. Graham, we began talking about that Abrego Garcia, the air quote Maryland man, if he were to come back to the United States, then he would be probably, seen through court and then summarily deported. In reality, that's the most likely outcome. So you more than alluded to, you stated openly that you believe that the reason behind this is because Democrats in Congress want to frustrate Donald Trump's deportation efforts. And I think there's a lot of evidence for that. And I'm reminded that Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George Bush, all deported up to, I think it's like 1 million people, maybe more, I think, for Barack Obama during their terms. And what we're seeing now is there's individual cases it's not broad sweeping, although there are broad sweeping measures taking place, but they're individual lawsuits challenging and putting holds on what's happening to individuals, because if Donald Trump wants to deport 1 million illegal aliens, specifically he's after the ones that are criminal illegal aliens, for which the country is, I believe, according to the latest polling, 55% believe everybody who's illegal in the country should be deported. For those who have committed violent crimes, that number rises to 85%. That is across all parties, all leanings. And so if Donald Trump wants to remove 1 million violent criminal illegal aliens, or however many there happen to be, and it wouldn't surprise me if it is close to 1 million, it seems that they're going to try and launch 1 million lawsuits. And now that 1 million of it, let's say it's 100,000. 100,000 lawsuits that the Trump administration has to contend with. This is about tying him in knots, so he can't actually do anything, right?
Oh yeah, it's very much about that. I mean, it's the broader picture here is literally just grinding the whole Trump agenda to a halt, on all issues. And they've chosen this litigation over these illegal aliens to do so. I will say one thing though, if they manage, and like I said, I cannot see this happening. But if somehow they manage to get Garcia back into this country, they'll probably send him on some kind of speaking tour or something. You can imagine they're going to milk it for what it's worth.
Sure.
But here's the problem. If he returns to this country but between the time he returns to this country and the time he eventually is deported again, which he almost certainly will be, just not back to El Salvador, it'll be somewhere else. But between that time, if he commits any kind of crime, then wow, that is going to be a kind of a death blow for the whole Democrat pro illegal alien narrative. So they better hope, if they manage somehow to get him back, they better hope he acts like a saint while he's here.
Oh yeah, it's funny that they really are tied to this. Now there's a certain element of spin involved. They're saying it's not about the individual. They're saying it's about the rule of law, that people go through due process. How do you do it's kind of funny, right? Because it's illegal to enter the country illegally. That's a reality. And yes, we hear, well, it's not a felony. Well, still, it's a crime, right? So, the people who argue that it's not a felony, are they saying that nothing that isn't a felony shouldn't be charged, or the punishment shouldn't be enforced? It's a ridiculous mental path to go down. But you have this.
I can drive, 100 miles an hour through a school zone. I'm not committing a felony, so should I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Graham would never do that, and does not endorse such a thing. But yeah, that is the point, right? If it's not a felony, then it shouldn't be charged, it shouldn't be enforced. But here's the thing: they've got this situation where they're demanding the rule of law, due process to be followed. Now, what is that, though? What is that? It's like an immigration judge rules that you're here illegally, therefore you should be sent back. Mm-hmm. That's it, right?
Well, and that's the thing. You see, this whole thing about that, any claim that Mr. Garcia did not get his due process is just factually incorrect. He absolutely did. There were hearings, at least one hearing, I believe 2 hearings, and he ended up with a deportation order against him. And the whole point is he was supposed to self-deport.
Yes.
Basically, well, that's what that order said. That order says you have got to get yourself a plane ticket and get on a plane and go somewhere else. And he could have gone to any country. The one thing, the one mistake that the Trump administration made was that the order said that, he should self-deport to any country, but he cannot be deported to El Salvador. And
Right.
of course, then they sent him to El Salvador. And that was a mistake. They screwed that up. And
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, if they hadn't done that, if they deported him to anywhere else, we wouldn't even be talking about him right now. So to a certain extent, to be fair, the Trump administration sort of brought this on themselves, but now it's just gotten silly.
Yeah, if they're trying to be bold in what they do, they've got to realize, cross those I's, dot those T's, or the other way around, whichever you prefer. But they've got to get it right because they know that it's going to be ammunition against them, right?
Of course, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you might think to yourself, well, there's still a lot of people embedded in the administration and the federal government, as on a wider scale, that are doing all they can to sabotage Trump. So is it not possible that maybe somebody at the Department of Homeland Security actually arranged to have this guy deported to El Salvador specifically because he wasn't supposed to be deported to El Salvador?
So you're right. That is on the verge of conspiracy, which I love. No, I'm kidding. Well, I do, but I'm kidding.
Well, that's conspiracy big. They've scored an awful lot of wins over the last few years.
Sure, they really have. They really have. What's the difference between a sane person and a conspiracy theorist? About 3 months nowadays. So there's actually something to that. There are a lot of holdovers from different administrations who are ideologically wedded to one party over the other, and that party is not necessarily Donald Trump's Republican Party. Now, what I think is happening, and I think we can see this quite clearly, is it's not that they're breaking laws. I'm not accusing anybody of breaking laws, but they are engaged in and I don't know if I made this term up or I heard it somewhere, but malicious compliance.
Malicious compliance.
Right, that's a thing, right? I didn't make that up. No, okay,
Yeah.
right.
So malicious. No, I know I've heard that. So yeah, and
Right.
and just so people understand, malicious compliance basically means that you deliberately, overzealously comply with certain orders, particularly kind of Trump's executive actions. You overzealously comply with them to the point where a good example was at the Department of Defense, where they scrapped the whole DEI thing, and then some official at the Department of Defense decided, okay, well, if they're scrapping DEI, then that means we'll have to remove the Tuskegee Airmen material out of the training curriculum. And of course, that was never the point. And when they found out that had been done, they put that stuff back in. But that was a good example of malicious compliance right there. Yeah.
So I think that's what we're seeing, and I honestly I can't see a way that the Trump administration can work around that, other than what he's doing now is offering as many voluntary layoffs as possible, cutting down the departments and getting rid of as many people as possible from the employ of the federal government. Which, I mean, there are a great many reasons to do that anyway, in terms of lightening the burden on the individual taxpayer for a start.
Yep.
But to actually remove people who would purposely, overzealously do something with the intention of corrupting it, I think that's also a worthwhile endeavor there to basically push back everything to a bare bones set of organizational structures. Now, Graham, one more question. So, Graham, we've discussed the numbers on this, like 55% support deporting all illegal immigrants, 85% support deporting all those who have committed crimes whilst in the country. Do you think that what the Democratic Party is doing today resonates with voters, or are traditional Democrat voters or Democrat leaners among the independents, are they pulling out their blue rinse hair?
It's hard to even come up with an answer as to why the Democrats are going down this road, and it's basically like the other stuff. It's like the transgender ideology and all of this kind of stuff. It's as if the Democratic Party has decided to kind of shrink its base down to the hardcore progressives, because they're not doing themselves any favors here. And this is one of several reasons why Trump won so resoundingly in 2024. It's because obviously an awful lot of people who usually vote Democrat, although are not on board with all the extremist ideology, they went for Trump. And and that's why the midterms are the Republicans to lose. The Republican Party is very capable of screwing up and snatching defeat from the jaws of victory in 2026. But, really, they only have to keep cool heads, because the Democrats are alienating at least a large chunk of their own base.
Yeah, many of them can't even pass their own party's ideological purity test. Graham J. Noble, thanks ever so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, head coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. I'd like to thank our guests, Lisa K. Donna and Graham J. Noble, and of course you at home for taking the time to tune in each week and join us. You are appreciated. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. Thanks for being here.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.